As we rested under the willow tree, Pink asked me about my family back home. Well, I got one brother still at home to help run a place for Pa, I answered. What was your outfit again? Pink asked. He'd asked me that before. The Ohio 24th, I carried the staff. Wasn't supposed to ever carry a gun, but then so many died. Even us boys had to carry. Them men, they were slaughtered like hogs. Well, at least you got to carry. In the 48th, we couldn't have guns at first. We fought with sticks and hammers and sledges. Can you imagine? They didn't trust us with our own fight. I couldn't imagine such a thing. Then when they finally did give us muskets, they were from the Mexican-American War. Those muskets jammed, they misfired, they blew up in our faces. Then how in God's name can you want to go back, I asked. Well, because it's my fight, say, ain't it yours too? If we don't fight, then who will? I had no answer for him. But God forgive me, I did never, ever want to go back to that war. After a few more days, I could walk a little bit steadier, but still needed help. Pink took me out by the big house and walked me through it. Weren't much of it left, really. It was mostly burned out. Master A. Lee had a library full of books right here, he said. He taught me to read. He taught me to read even though it was against the law. Well, then he must have been a good man, I said. More bad than good, say. Sometimes I think he just liked being read to. But there was this book of poetry, say, that was this thick. Every night I'd read out loud to him from that book. And I blessed this house because of all them beautiful books, but I cursed it too for what it stood for. We walked a bit further. To be born a slave is a heap of trouble, say. But after Elu taught me to read, even though he owned my person, I knew that nobody ever again could own me. You feel hot, Pink, I said. Lord, I think you're as sick as me. Let me fetch you back to the house. Well, I'll be fine. I'm just a little tired, that's all. But I'm going to be ready to fight. I'm going to be ready to fight. That night, after we ate, Momo Bay came back to the table with a worn-out old Bible. She was so happy. My heart ached at the thought of telling her we'd be leaving soon. Master A. showed him how paper talks. Show him, Pink, she said. He took out a pair of spectacles from his pockets and opened the Bible to the Psalms of David and started to read. His voice was steady, and he had such wonder. Just hearing them words made pictures come clean into my head. Oh, I finally said, I surely do wish I could read. Then I realized I said it without thinking. When Pink saw I was ashamed, he took my hand. Well, I'll teach you to read, say. Some one good day I'll teach you. I could feel my face flushing up. Then I spoke up. Well, I done something important, I announced. Well, of course you have, child. Of course you have, his mother said. No, I touched Mr. Lincoln's hand. It were near Washington. We were quartered there just before Bull Run. The president himself was shaking everybody's hands, and, well, I just put my hand right out. And he took it, Pink asked. Yep, he took it, I answered. Well, now there's a sign, ain't it? He said, smiling broadly. Touch my hand, Pink. Now you can say you touched the hand that shook the hand of Abraham Lincoln. Next best thing to touching him, Pink said in wonder. Most of the next day, Pink was studying an old map. Marauders don't fan out further than 30 miles or so from their camp, so if they came here, that means their units have to be that close. We got to get south of the river. See here, say? That's where my troops were headed. We could meet up with them, out here, I figure. Meet up with who? Meet up with who? You ain't leaving. You ain't leaving. His mother's voice caught as she came upon us. Now, my mother, you knew we couldn't stay here. You had to know that, he said as he tried to calm her. No, no, no. My babies, my dear babies, she cried. She was inconsolable for a time. Then she sat still and feared and just listened. Mother, this war has to be one of the sickness that has taken this land and never stopped. Pink always called slavery the sickness. We have to go. We have to go. She knelt at her feet. By the look that came into her eyes, she'd known this day was coming all along. I could feel my breathing catch and my chest was heavy. My hands were sweating and I felt sick at my stomach. I knew I had to tell Pink something. I knew I had to tell him, but I didn't know how. That night I couldn't sleep. "What's wrong, child?" Momo Bay said to me from her chair. "I don't want to go back," I blurted out. "I know, child," she said. "Of course you don't." "No, you don't understand. I took up and ran away from my unit. I was hit when I was running." I sobbed so hard my ribs hurt. I'm a coward and a deserter." She looked at the fire and said nothing for the longest time. Then her voice covered my cries. "Well, you ain't nothing of the kind. You ain't nothing of the kind. You a child. You a child. Of course you scared. Ain't nobody that ain't." "But I'm not brave. I'm not brave like Pink. I'm not brave." "Child, being brave don't mean you ain't afeard. Don't you know that?" "I don't want to die." "Well, there's things worse than death, child. But you got nothing to fear. You're here now. And I'm hugging you up. You're going to be an old man someday. I've seen it. And when it's your time, the sweet Lord will send a hummingbird to fly your soul to heaven. Now, you ain't afeard of hummingbirds, are you?" Her voice brought me sweet sleep that night. I dreamt of hummingbirds, green pastures, and wildflowers. The next morning, we mustered to leave. We packed cornbread, salt pork, and dried beans. I would have done just about anything to stay, but my place was to go with Pink. I owed him that. Just as we were making the last sweep of the place, making sure that there were no signs of us ever being there, we heard wild screams and shrieks coming from the woods. "Marauders," Pink said as he grabbed a piece of wood for a club. Momo Bay took it from him. "You get to the root cellar. They ain't got no truck with an old dark woman. Now you get to that cellar, you hear?" We didn't like it, but she pushed us in. "Hurry, hurry before they're here." She lifted the root cellar door and shoved us in. "Don't you come out. Don't you come out until I tell you you are safe. You stay there, do you hear?" We heard the porch steps creak as she ran from the cabin. "She's drawing them off," Pink whispered. When the marauders came in, my heart was pounding so hard, I was sure they could hear it there above us. There was a terrible commotion as they ransacked, looking for food. Then there was silence. Then a single shot echoed through the trees outside. They let out a war whoop and they thundered off on their horses. We waited for a sign from Momo Bay. We waited and we waited, but it didn't come. Finally, we climbed out and ran outside, only to see Momo Bay lying just beyond the porch. The gunshot we heard was the shot that killed her. "We put you in their way by staying here," Pink cried as he rocked her in his arms. Her eyes were looking in a far-away place as we closed them. "Your son loves you, Momo Bay. Your son loves you," he sobbed as he kissed her. We both held her hands until there was no more warmth in them. After we buried her under the willow tree, we set out. Pig figured we were 3 days' walk from Union troops. He watched the movement of the sun. Her words still rang in my heart, her words about being brave. And my steps were as sure now as they'd ever been since the war started. We walked in the open, as clear as a country stroll, until the morning of the second day. Then we knew we were being followed by Confederate troopers. "Take these," Pink said as he took his spectacles from his pocket. "If they catch me with them, then there's going to be trouble for sure." When they did catch up to us, one yelled at me, "Where are you going with that darky boy?" I was afraid to answer because of my northern accent. It would dead sure give us away. "Boy, what outfit you part of?" their leader barked again. I couldn't answer. "Are you Union boy?" one jeered as he pulled my uniform from my knapsack. No, I ain't no Yankee. I got that one from a dead one," I sputtered, trying to convince them. But that's when we were grabbed. My words had given us away. We were prisoners of the Confederate Army. We were held up in a barn all night that first night. Pink shivered with a fever. I held him in my arms and comforted him, just as he had done for me. The next morning, we were thrown into a boxcar. We rode for what seemed 2 days, stopping many times. When the door slid open, finally, the daylight was blinding. We were loaded into a buckboard and taken through a town. The town's folks looked hard at us. All they had left for us was mean looks and a heap of hate. We jarred to a stop in front of gates that marked the entrance to a stockade. "It says Andersonville," Pink whispered. My heart stopped. I'd heard of this place. It was one of the worst of the Confederate camps. When we were pulled from the buckboard, we both fell hard to the ground. "No, no," I begged as they pulled us along. Because of his fever, Pink stumbled and he fell. They dragged him along with such meanness. He didn't protest until they started to force us in separate directions. Then he reached for me and said, "Let me touch the hand. Let me touch the hand that touched Mr. Lincoln. Please, let me touch the hand just like last time." I watched tears fill his eyes. He cleaved my hand to his until they wrenched us apart. They smote him and dragged him away from me. He looked back at me and he tried to say something more, but they crossed his back with nod at him and they pushed him along. Sheldon Russell Curtis was released from Andersonville prison some months later, weighing no more than 78 pounds. Andersonville was built to hold only 10,000 prisoners, but by the end of the war, it held 33,000 soldiers. There was no fresh water, no shelter, and no food. 13,000 men and boys died of starvation and dysentery. Sheldon Curtis returned to his home and recovered. He settled in Berlin Township in Saranac, Michigan. He married Abigail M. Barnard and fathered 7 children. He became a grandfather and a great-grandfather during his long lifetime. He died a very old man in 1924. Pincus A. Lee never returned home. For him, there was to be no wife, no children, no grandchildren, no one to remember him. He was told that he was hanged within hours after taken to Andersonville. His body was thrown into a lime pit. There was no marker provided for him. I know this story to be true because Sheldon Russell Curtis told his daughter, Rosa. Rosa Curtis Stowell told it to her daughter, Estella. Estella Stowell Barber, in turn, told it to her son, William. Then William told me, because I am his daughter. When he finished this story, he put out his hand and said, "Patricia, touch my hand." And I did. And he says, "You just touched the hand that touched the hand that shook the hand of Abraham Lincoln." This book serves as a written memory of Pincus A. Lee. It says there are no living descendants to do this for him. Now that you have heard this, and before I close this book, I want you to say his name out loud, and I want you to vow that you will remember him always. Pincus A. Lee. Right. That is the story of Pincus A.